If you're like most players, you hop into ranked straight from the main menu, no warm up, no focus, and you just queue up and hope for the best. And then after a few games of missing open nets or double jumping when you meant to flip, you wonder why you're losing MMR. But the truth is, your first couple games are never your best because your hands just aren't ready and your brain's still waking up and your mechanics are all over the place. The top 1% don't just load in cold, they have a system, a consistent warm-up they do every time, so when they enter a ranked match, they're already locked in, and that's what this video is for. I'm gonna give you a simple, efficient warm-up routine, one that'll actually make a difference in how you play. And whether you're grinding to get out of Diamond or pushing for SSL, this is how you prep like a serious player. Let's get into it. All right, before we get into the actual routine, I wanna go ahead and, kind of show you guys that I have a decent, idea of, Rocket League and, how to play the game at the highest level. I've been playing for like 10 years. This account has been number one, a few times, number two a lot of the time. So I just kind of wanted to start with that. And I also want to note that I am a grounded player. So the majority of this warm-up routine will be grounded advice because that's kind of my bread and butter. Obviously, you can't get to a certain point and not have air mechanics either. So I'm decent in the air as well. I'm not like Zen or anything, but I'm rather comfortable in the air. So that's kind of what this warm-up routine is going to be broken down into. Is it's going to be ground play, it's going to be air play, and then it's going to be, a mix of both, turning ground into air, and then, turning air play, into ground play with, catches and whatever else. So that's kind of how this is going to be broken down into. All right, so the first step here is identifying your play style, right? So if you're someone who's very grounded, like me, you want to make sure that you're putting yourself in a good position to perform in ranked. And what I mean by that is if you're a grounded player and you're spending your free play time, doing this stuff like going off the wall, going for like double flip resets, musties, whatever it may be, but you don't actually do that in ranked, there's essentially no point in warming up. Because if you're doing that, but you're not performing these movements in game, then it's not even warming up. The whole point of warming up is warming up the mechanics you use in ranked. That way, you can stay consistent. But if you're just warming up nothing that you're using in game, you're not warmed up at all. So if you're going to warm up, make sure you're warming up correctly. Don't warm up, don't let your warm-up routine look like this. Like going up the wall and just wall dashing the whole time. Like this is just straight up useless. Obviously if you want to practice your recoveries, so be it. Like if that's your goal, but make sure your warm-up routine, again, is matching what you're doing in game. That's kind of the most important thing I can tell you. That's why I'm starting out with this, because it's probably the most important detail in this video. Because again, I see so many people I coach in my coaching program that are trying to do this in their warm-up, like do like air dribble drags or whatever it may be. And then their gameplay looks like this, right? Like flakes dribbles into flicks, top left or whatever it may be, but like they're not actually doing what they're practicing. They're doing this kind of stuff. So again, just make sure you're practicing what you're doing. That's the consistency factor. And going along with the consistency factor is we want to make sure our settings are the same in free play that we do in ranked. This might seem, like a no-brainer, have your settings the same, but a lot of people will like turn off their audio and then just crank music while they're warming up and then just be like autopiloting, like jamming out to like Justin Bieber or whatever it may be. You want to make sure that your settings are the same, your gameplay is the same. You want to make sure everything is as similar as possible as your ranked so that, you can actually perform well in your ranked and then not tilt. Because what will happen is a lot of people will do these autopilot-ish warm-up routines and then they'll go into ranked and they'll say one of two things. They'll either say, nah man, this warm-up routine's trash, it didn't change anything. That's the first response. Or they'll just like, they'll chalk the first game up to, oh, this was just a warm-up game, and so they kind of cope and justify their losing. Oh no man, it's my first game on, it's fine to lose. Now, because you should have warmed up to prevent that first game on kind of mentality. The issue there is you're treating the first game as a warm-up, but if we just use free play correctly, we don't have to be doing the whole first game automatically losing kind of thing. So this will kind of prevent that if you're doing this correctly. So now that we've done enough yapping, we can actually get into the warm-up routine. So I'm going to start with ground play players warm-up routine, then I'll go into hybrid, then I'll go into just complete air mechanic warm-up routine. Like if you're like Zen or AJ or Forky or whoever it may be that's super mechanical in the air. So first things first, for grounded players, when you're warming up, you want to make sure that you're starting with, you know, the car under the ball, because that's what ground play comes down to, is dribbling, right? So whether you're, you know, flicking, you have to do that from a dribble. You know, whether you're going for a low 50, you have to do that from a dribble. So we do everything from dribbles. So you want to make sure that your dribbles are very consistent. Like, this is the foundation of all ground play is dribbles. So we want to make sure our dribbling is really good. And if you're not as familiar with dribbling, like if maybe you're newer to the game or a bit lower ranked, I'd highly suggest like working on this like at least 10 to 15 minutes a day, because this will really get your dribbling very consistent. I used to practice dribbling for like an hour a day back in the day, just doing this. And then once you get really consistent at this, then we can move on to, you know, actually changing dribbles to more offensive plays. But if you can dribble consistently, you'll set yourself up for, you know, some pretty good positions. Like you can, you know, turn any dribble into a flick, or, you know, a power slide cut or a low 50, or you can even, you know, do something like this and set yourself up for a shot, etc., etc. So with dribbles, we can create so many opportunities, and that's kind of the bread and butter with ground play, is you're just creating such a versatility in your gameplay because you can dribble. Like, you can do legit anything. So that's kind of why I'm more of a ground player. But that's kind of the first step for warming up, is making sure that you can dribble the ball very consistently. And if you can't, like if your dribbles are off, I would honestly recommend just dribble until you're feeling really good. So that's kind of my piece of advice if your dribbles are feeling off. But you want to make sure you have, you know, this kind of consistency. And I'm also going to change my settings because I don't know why I had it on such low quality. But yeah, so that's for the first step, is dribbling. Now for the second step, is the way I personally like to play is I flick a lot, right? So like that's kind of what I do, is I like to flick a lot. So the second part of my personal warm-up routine is I'll always flick, right? So I'm always practicing my flicks to make sure they're good in game. And you'll see they're pretty consistent, and that's because I do this every time I warm up, right? It's very rare I'll have a bad flick, and I mean very rare. And I'm not even trying to be like arrogant, but like once you practice enough, you'll get to a point where it's very hard for you to have a bad flick, because you just do it so many times, repetition. So just make sure you're practicing the movements you do. So here I'll practice flicking. I'll do this for like 5 to 10 minutes straight, just flicking the ball. So these are me flipping to the right. That's actually my good side. I'm not as consistent with this side because I don't really do it, but obviously, you know, I'm rather consistent in this side as well, because again, flicking is kind of my bread and butter. So I'd practice that as well. If you're a grounded player and you're really, you know, into flicking, I would do that as well. And then the third step of the warm-up routine for me is power slide cuts. So I'm making sure, you know, I can dribble the ball with power slide, because this is something I do a lot as well. I'm always dribbling, and then I'm power sliding to avoid players. And this is mainly my strategy in 1v1. Those of you who, you know, those like top 100 players who play me, they know that like I'm always, you know, cutting the ball or whatever it may be. So that's what I do as well. And then in terms of recovery mechanics, you'll see me, you know, also doing, you know, the occasional wall dash, which I forgot to press my jump button there. Like, you'll see me doing these wall dashes, and no, I do not have a macro. I always get that comment. Like, people think I'm macroing wall dashes. If you go back to my video like 2 years ago, I have a wall dash tutorial there if you guys want to see it. It kind of blew up a bit, so you guys can watch that if you want to know how I do these, you know, wall dashes. But point is, that's kind of for the grounded warm-up routine. Now I'll go into kind of a hybrid play style. You'll notice in that first one, I didn't cover anything in the air, and that's because I don't really go in the air when I'm, you know, actually trying really hard to win. But if you want to be, you know, an air-based player, there's a few different things you need to understand. The first thing you need to understand is ball spin, right? So when you hit the ball, where's the ball gonna go, right? So like, for example, if the ball's going like this, and I drive into this, you'll see how it goes very high. But if the ball's rolling towards me, hold on. If the ball's rolling towards me and I do the same thing, it goes high, but do you see how the ball has like a backspin on it? That means that the ball is gonna land very slowly. Whereas if the ball is just going straight like this and I do this, you'll see how the ball lands quicker. It's kind of like a really nuanced topic, but the ball will drop. Like, the ball will drop like this if the ball is rolling towards you. It's gonna have like a backspin. But if the ball is just bouncing up and down and you go into it, the ball is going to have more of a straight diagonal. So it's a bit of physics, but it's something to note, which may seem pretty negligible. But for example, that was a bad bounce setup. So for example, if I'm doing this and I want to shoot this, you'll see that if we shoot that, not only is it 107 kph, as we can see on there, but it's also gonna land much higher because we went off the bounce. Now, if I show you the exact same thing, but with the roll, you'll see how it does this thing, right? You see how it does that? That's because it's rolling towards me, so it has this kind of spin. I don't really know what the spin's called. I kind of just figured this out of years and years of playing, but it will have a different spin. And this applies for the airplay because, for example, if the ball is rolling up the wall and we try to jump with it, this will be a really good setup for, you know, a flip reset or an air dribble, but it won't be a good setup if we want to bang it off of the wall, right? So if the ball is rolling towards you, doing this really won't work, right? And you're probably thinking, where am I going with this, right? Well, I'm going with the fact that when you're going up the wall, you need to know what you're gonna do before you do it. Because if you don't, you'll just end up kind of not making a decision and then being indecisive and then being inconsistent. And it's just a whole downhill from there. So the whole reason I bring all this up is because when we're going in the air in free play, we want to be working on a specific mechanic. So if I'm working on double touches, we should be trying to hit this into a position where I can double tap it. Obviously I can't because I'm trash, but you guys all can because you guys are the GOATs. Anyone that watches me is the best player out there. So like you want to be practicing specific things. So if we want to be going for air dribbles, make a setup specifically, you know, for air dribbles like this. You know, if you guys want an air dribble tutorial, let me know. I guess that was a double tap, but tomato, tomato, right? So same thing here. If we want to go for like double flip resets, we can get one, we can get two, and then we can just try to practice really hard situations. Obviously, if you want an easy double flip reset, you know, I can make an easy setup and then not get it. But I try to make situations harder for me in free play. That way, you know, in game, I'm not gonna have a perfect situation, so it will help out a little bit. So that's kind of my tip for practicing air mechanics is one, put yourselves in bad positions, like that makes it very hard to have setups for, because again, anyone can air dribble with an open field, you know, with the net right in front of you. It's pretty much the easiest thing ever. So we wanna make sure the situations are hard, that way we have a higher inclination of succeeding in game. So like I always make sure my setups are pretty hard to do. So that's kind of the tip I have for airplay. There's really not much other advice I can give other than make sure you're only doing air mechanics that you do in ranked. Like if you can't triple flip reset in ranked, don't try to triple flip reset in free play, right? It just doesn't make sense. If you don't musty in game, don't musty in free play. That's kind of my tip for, you know, air mechanics in general. But again, if you're someone who is really trying to get good at air mechanics, I would highly recommend learning a directional air roll. That's kind of where you want to start, is learning directional air roll, because it enables so many different mechanics, right? For example, if you want a breezy, directional air roll right for that one. If you want to, you know, have a really easy setup for a flip reset, air roll right, get the flip. I didn't get the flip, but get the flip, and then control it, and then 50, right? So that's kind of the key for, you know, the basics. So, and once you have the directional air roll down, if you're really a free roll player, you can, this key that so I played before directional air roll came out. So what you would have to do to simulate air roll right is, let me actually turn on my controller cam to show you. All right, so now that we have the controller cam enabled, what you would have to do to simulate air roll right is you would have to spam this air roll button like this, right? You'd have to spam this a lot. And then what you would do, I actually don't remember how to do it. You would have to, okay, yeah, that's how you do it. You would have to like put your joystick in the opposite direction as the roll. So that's kind of the key if you really don't want to use directional air roll, but I'm not going to go in depth with that because I haven't done that in like 6 years or however long Rocket League's been free to play, or I don't even know whenever directional air roll came out. I think it was before free to play, actually, like a year or two before. But point is, that's kind of the key if you're a free air roll player, is just try to just get mechanics down that you do in ranked, right? As you can see, I'm pretty mechanical in the air, and obviously I'm pretty mechanical on the ground. So that's kind of the piece of advice I have for the hybrid. Now, if you're someone who wants to just straight up only go in the air, your warm-up routine is going to take a bit longer because you need to practice every part of the air. So you need to practice flip resets, right? Like this. You need to practice double taps because that's what you're going to be doing in the air. You need to practice musties because that's a very versatile mechanic. I'm actually not that mechanical to do like the sidewall musties. Maybe I am. No, I'm not. But like you have to practice pretty much every piece of airplay. So again, you know, the musties, the flip reset musties, the double flip resets, you have to practice pretty much everything. So I don't really recommend, you know, just having a strictly air-based playstyle. But if you really want to, the first step is when you go into free play, don't even go on the ground. Just start with getting down your flip resets. I wouldn't even practice air dribbles too, because once you get to higher ranks, you're never really going to do that. But go in the air and practice just getting flip resets, fake flip resets into low 50s. That's the first step. Then what you'll want to do is practice getting ceiling shots. So ceiling shots like this, holding it, getting the flip, and do each of these for like 5 or 6 times until you're really consistent at them. Then once you can do that, go for double flip resets. Here, flip reset, double flip reset, and try to score it. And do this 5 or 6 times. Then once you can do that, put the ball in your car and try to create an airplay from yourself. So go like, I don't really do this often. Go like this, and then try to create your own airplay from your car, right? Like that. So double taps from your car. Then once you can do that, once you can do that, try to create like full field double taps. I can't actually do that. I'm not at that level yet. But point is, you need to be practicing everything you can in the air, which is again not what I do, which is again why I can't really showcase this the best way, because I'm decent, but I'm not zen. But yeah, that's kind of my warm-up routine. If you guys want a customized warm-up routine to the way you specifically play in your games and your play style, my coaching program and our team, we create all this stuff for you. We give you a tailored plan. We cover your mentality. We cover, you know, ranked programs. We cover everything you need to actually get to that next level. So, you know, if you've been the same rank for a while and you're tired of being stuck, we can help you out. You can either join my Discord server and apply there, or you can apply on my website directly. Link for both of those will be in the description. I really appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.